All right, welcome to this midweek connection. We're happy to have you here. We took last week off to kind of give everybody a bit of a break, but we're also happy to have you here with us on Hump Day as we discuss some stuff. My name is Travis Jones. I'm the Minister of Spiritual Formation here at Hillside UMC. And it's, again, my honor to welcome you. Now, we got one quick announcement before we get started today. We are on the heels of August 2nd coming up, which is the date that our church will actually reopen. And so we're looking forward to that. And we want you to stay in the know. And we actually have set up a campus update site on our website. And you can go there at hillsideumc.org/updates. And that's a great way to stay in the know. And if you have questions that you can't find the answer to there, you can also email us at info@hillsideumc.org. So again, a great way to stay connected, and you're going to see me putting that up more and more every week we do the midweek connection. So I want to make sure you're aware of that. Now, this week we're going to be continuing our spiritual formation series, and before I get into any of that, we always like to ask a fun question, right, to start things off. If you're watching with us, and I think we've got a couple of folks watching right now with us. So the fun question is this: where have you thought about going on vacation this year, or where did you want to go and had to cancel? Now, that may not seem like a fun question to actually put out there. It may seem depressing because if you had to cancel it, probably isn't fun. But vacations are fun to think about. So where are you going on vacation this year, and what? Or if you had to cancel it, where were you going? So that's our fun question for today. So I look forward to seeing your comments on that as well. So we got people joining us right now. So before we really get going, I want to go ahead and welcome in our guest for the day. His name is Jason Johnson, and he is the chairperson of our Spiritual Formation Council here at Hillside. And Jason, you're live with us right now. And say, yep, hey, what's up? Jason and I are going to be talking about our subject matter today. But before we do that, Jason, I'm going to tell you where I was supposed to go on vacation and what happened and what we're doing with that. So to answer my fun question, we had planned to go to Florida, my wife and I, for our anniversary, which was last week. And we actually canceled it back in, back in, I think it was early end of April. Just due to everything that was going on. And so we didn't get to do that, but that was our thing. We were going to the beach, and we've got another one set up now that we're going to try to go in end of September, so we'll see if that happens. But we did a little mini staycation, if that makes sense. Where did
a lot
you?
of states are going on these days.
Oh, yeah.
What I read.
Yeah. What about you guys?
I've got one.
Shoot.
Share mine.
Yeah.
Your timing's impeccable. I feel like we're living parallel lives because we were supposed to go to Florida as well a couple weeks ago with some friends, guy I've known since first grade, and I forget the name of the storm. That was a tropical storm that just came through.
Yeah.
That was coming up, and we ended up canceling. We were trying to make it work. Every day looking at the weather, but I could just see us going down with the bikes in tow and the wind and rain blowing. Everybody's leaving Florida, and we're going down there. So we had to cancel that trip, but lo and behold, we're in Florida this week with my parents, so it worked out.
Nice. We get to be in Florida.
Yeah, so
I get you.
Mine.
Again, if you're watching with us, answer. We'd love to hear your answer to that question as well. Where are you going on vacation this year in light of the current situation of things? So anytime during this broadcast, if you want to throw that answer out there, I would love to see it. So we're going to go ahead and get started because we try to stay on for about 45 minutes or so and this discussion. And if you, at any point, if you're watching this and you want to add to or make a comment, we encourage you to do so. At the end of this broadcast, we're broadcasting on Facebook Live right now, but at the end, I'll also make sure that it gets uploaded to our church YouTube channel as well so that those who do not have Facebook can check it out there as well. So our topic of discussion, last week we talked about prayer, and that was with Susan, or the week before last with Susan Purefoy. And this week is about fellowship with other believers. And from a spiritual formation standpoint, that's a huge thing. I think the word fellowship, though I understand it, I don't like the word fellowship. I like to use the term connecting or connection with other believers because I think it kind of more describes what we're going for here. But that's our topic for today. It's fellowship or connecting with other believers. And Scripture has a lot to say about connecting and fellowshipping with other believers. Like number one thing it says, in Hebrews, it says, "Let us not give up the habit of meeting together as some are doing. Instead, let us encourage one another." There's also, in Genesis where God, created man, and the first thing he said was not good was that he was alone, right? So he knew that man needed community and connection in order to be healthy, in a sense. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And before we really dive into that, Jason, what are your thoughts on that particular topic?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. We're social people, right? To begin with, we're not supposed to be isolated. It's not healthy. I mean, so it's good to be with other people. We have a new dog. Bella's her name, a puppy, right? And
Yeah,
she can't stand to be alone. And she barks and hollers and whines whenever we're not around. And I got to thinking. I started reading about it, and they're social animals. They can't stand to not be around other people. Now, good thing we don't bark, right? Whenever
yeah.
we're not around people,
Well,
right?
sometimes we do.
But yeah, sometimes we complain. Why? No, I mean we're called to fellowship with one another. Once we receive, Christ as our Lord and Savior, and we choose a church, we it's a deep commitment to one another to fellowship together. The way I have been taught and have heard, and it's very spiritual. Everything seems to come alive whenever you are together. It's I've learned that by the current situation we've been going through, watching, our sermons online is totally different
Yeah,
than being together, fellowshipping together
right.
with that energy and just, and I also have heard that it's practice for heaven, right? Fellowshipping. We're going to be doing a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
connecting in heaven with one another. So I hope we enjoy being around
yeah,
one
yeah.
another.
Because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble,
That's right. That's right.
right?
So I don't
Um,
know if that's what you're looking for, but that's kind of my thoughts. It's kind of the whole church family thing. We become a unit, connected together as a family. And by the way, that family lasts forever.
right.
So,
Yeah. Well, those are good thoughts. Those are good thoughts. The direction we're going to kind of go with this is talking about how when you look at connecting and you look at fellowshipping and things like that, and why that is important. We're actually going to take it that direction a little bit. And you mentioned some of those things, but we're really going to look at the relational aspect of things because when you begin to fellowship and connect with other believers, you develop relationships, and that's a hugely important thing in the kingdom because I've always said that relationships are the currency of heaven. Right? You said it. That's what's going to be like. It's about fellowship, constant and connecting when you're there. So, but there's some things that are important when it comes to being in fellowship with other believers and why we want to do it. And there's also things that happen when we don't do it.
right.
When we try to avoid it for whatever, whether we're hurt or whatever, there are things that negatively happen when we do it. So, I want to talk about some of the positive things and why fellowshipping, connecting, and relationships are important when it comes to spiritual formation. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
Okay. So our number one thing that I've got on my list is Bible study. I can't count the times that I read the Bible by myself, and for the first, I think it was the second one that of these that we did with our spiritual formation council, we talked about Bible study, and then we talked about prayer after that. But the Bible study, you can read it by yourself, but you need people to strengthen and balance the Word of God in your life. I mean, and you just do because where two or three are gathered, He is in their midst. And I've got all kinds of examples. Do you have any thoughts towards that?
Yeah, I mean, just having somebody like whenever I go through these peaks and valleys of quiet time, and we could talk more about that. But as far as reading the Bible and studying the Bible by yourself, I mean, it's tough, complex, and we might think it means one thing and it means something totally different, that kind of thing. And it helps with the Bible that has the notes at the bottom, and it amazes me, how many times I've read something and thought one thing, and you go down there and it's totally different.
Right.
And so definitely Bible study helps you get a better grasp maybe with the Word of God.
Yeah. The thought of and I always like to well, it's not really a story, but an observation that I've found to be true. I'll watch people, and I was in it. Well, I'll tell a story. I was in a group one time, and it was a group, and it was a Bible study group. We met. There were six of us, or no, there weren't six. There were five of us, and we met at a coffee shop. We met up in Holly Springs. It used to be a coffee shop up there called It's a Grind. I loved their coffee. There's only like 2 or 3 of them in the whole U.S. and it's gone now. But we used to meet there in the morning and we would do Bible study. And everybody would bring in what they felt like God had said to them and what they were reading and stuff and what they thought about it. And there was this one time one of the guys brought in something and he threw it out there and what he thought it meant, and it was like the group went, I don't know about that because that's not what I don't know if that's contextually true, and I don't know. And so it was a moment for the word of God to be strengthened and balanced in that. So there was an interpretation in a community versus just one person saying, "I've got it. This is what it means. This is what it says." Right.
Right.
It was a cool thing to see that happen. And when it's a true godly community, that kind of thing can happen without offense. And in our case, nobody got offended. He was just like, "Wow, I've never thought about it that way." Right. And it was a cool opportunity to see that kind of thing happen because I mean it's an immense thing with that. So, any thoughts?
Well, you learn from one another. You know what I mean? Like that. I guess I think about being up at one of the men's retreats several years ago and being with my group. We had a little cabin off site, and it was just so nice just having the conversations, around the campfire, and
Yeah,
never had a group of friends like that where we could talk about, the Bible and things. And I don't specifically remember, there were some disagreements in what we interpreted, maybe what heaven would be like and what it says about heaven and stuff like that. So it's definitely a learning experience, and you grow together, you connect to one another.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Connecting it's all part of it because, like I said, we weren't, and you said it too. We weren't created to be by ourselves.
right.
So here's another important thing as far as reasons go why fellowship with other believers and why that connectivity is so important. Very few people, and I found this to be true. And if you don't agree, please tell me. But very few people have folks who really know them.
Sure.
Like really know them, because a
Right.
lot of people will put on like a kind of a facade. Like this is me. Like if you look at social media,
Yes.
Facebook is how I want the world to perceive me,
How
right?
many friends do you have on Facebook?
Right. Yeah,
Right.
I've got like 900, and yeah, right. But that's how that's how I want the world to see me. But the real me isn't always like that, right? And
Totally.
there are people out there, including myself. Like if you knew who I was, you wouldn't want to hang around me, right? And that's kind of the thought. So having fellowship with other believers, connecting with other believers, and having that tight knit group of people, whether it's a class or whatever, it provides an opportunity to be really known by other
Right.
people, and in an unjudgmental environment. Have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, what's the saying? How many truly true friends do you have in a lifetime?
Right.
Two or three.
Yeah. True.
My best friend I've known since first grade. I use him as an example a lot because he is my oldest friend, and and might not truly know everything about me, even though we've known each other that long. But I would say I've had to share my being involved in a small group now. I've shared my life story, with them, and I got pretty deep, about some of the stuff that, now that I think about it, some of my best friends growing up that don't even know, what I told these guys that were in my small group. It was so refreshing, and they can help you through stuff maybe that you still might be dealing with. Some of the stuff maybe you revealed, that maybe pops back up, and they already know that's there, and they're prepared to maybe help you through that.
Right.
Kind of experience that I can relate there.
Yeah. How did it feel to be able to share those parts?
I've had to do it a couple times now. I can't remember if it was I think we did it in the couple small group that you met with us a few times. I think that's when we first maybe did. Maybe not. Maybe it was the men's group. But I've done my other small group, just men. But I've had to share it a couple times now, and it just, for me, you go over it in your head and you kind of have this conversation with yourself about when you're preparing for something like that,
Right.
and stuff you might have dealt with or are dealing with, and you kind of just talk in your head back and forth, and it's just kind of a relief whenever you do get it all out. And
It's like people really know.
it's kind of, it's like I'm not hiding, I'm here it is kind of thing, because you hit it on the head. We all put on our best,
Yeah.
face, right?
Yeah. Like this is how I want you to see me, though. This is
And it's
not.
hard to be ourselves. It's hard to be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. be yourself. And
Because people are afraid of rejection.
that's it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's
Most of the time, they're even noticing you, right? Anyway,
yeah,
so why be afraid of being yourself?
right. Yeah,
Anyway,
I mean, you're stuck being yourself. So it's interesting. So we have Bible study as an important reason for fellowship and connecting with other believers. Fellowship itself, having people really know who you are, and then there's the prayer element of things. And Susan and I talked in length about prayer, and so this is a different element of that. But the prayer element of connecting and fellowship with other believers is really having someone when you say, "I need prayer," or "This is going on. Can you pray for me?" Someone that will really do it, right? And someone that when it's all hitting the fan, that you've got a group or a person or several people or a class, they're praying for you, because that can
right.
mean the absolute world, to know.
Yeah.
Gives that confidence and things like that. So prayer is a big element of that. Now, you mentioned one thing I want to jump to. You said that you were able to share your story, right? And that's another
Right.
important reason why we want to be connected as a group, because you need people to share your story with, right?
Right.
Because your story and my story, though at times it seems like we're living parallel lives, they're different, right?
They are.
And your
Right.
story and my
Yeah, I didn't
some
biology. Wasn't good at biology.
yeah, and I was right. Yeah, so your story might speak to someone completely different and witness to them versus my story being able to reach out and touch somebody else different. So you need people to share your story with, and I think that's huge, huge. I think your wife's on here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, she just
I
put
hope
up a comment.
I was wondering if it's fine. This is like the only room in the house that we're in that has connection, so I don't know.
Don't know how she got it. She's
Yeah.
in the house, right? Let's put it up. She says
Okay.
our small group members, Jeff Bickerton, Christina Bickerton, Leslie Dalt. She's calling people out. Alexis
Nice.
Barnes and they're some of our closest friends, and we're thankful to have them. That's awesome.
Absolutely. You know, my parents always said that when we lived in Moultrie, Georgia, I was about 3 years old, and my mom and dad always said that some of their closest friends were the group of friends they had at their church. And I didn't really understand that until we got involved. Even though I've been in the church and my whole life growing up, I get when I started making friendships in middle school and high school, none of those friends, they were a totally separate group of friends. They didn't go to church. So I didn't have that kind of relationship with them, and I really didn't even know that relationship existed until I was in a small group with these guys. But now I know what my parents meant, because they truly are. I mean, we all went on vacation together last
Wow.
October. I mean, and it just and I say that I haven't seen them, but this whole time it's so weird. None of us we haven't been together, and it just it's been such a weird time. But we have connected in other ways a few times, and
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the connectivity and other ways that possible of that here in a second.
but it is just amazing. I mean, the friendships and just and hearing other people's story, you never, like what you just said, you never know how you might affect somebody with something
Right.
you might say that they might be going through. I mean, it we did share our stories in the couples group, because I know now I related to some, I had no idea that this other person that was in our group, that we kind of had a similar story background, kind of in high school type deal thing, and never would have thought it was interesting though, and you can relate, and you bond, and so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's super important. The other one, and one of the last reasons for that we've deemed kind of like an important thing with fellowshipping, connecting, and with other believers in the church or another church, or just believers in general, the church, would be support. And what I mean by that is you need people who will protect you. And there's a story I know, and I tell this in our growth track course that we run here for our membership, that I knew of a couple that was in a small group, and they went through a rough time. The guy lost his job, and they shared that in their small group, right? And when they shared that in their small group, it was amazing, the support and the wraparound. It was like a giant arms went around that couple. And what I meant by I need people to protect me is that when something happens, to know that there's a group of people that are there, and
It's
and
financially or whatever, right?
yeah, and they went into support mode and protect mode. How do we make sure that they get through this and aren't like damaged through this? How can
Right.
we help? And it was a real thing. And there's stories across the board, whether it's in small groups, classes, anything like that, where that's happened with folks.
Right.
We have one that's shared every time we run Growth Track. Somebody shares one of our lay leaders, or not lay leaders, but one of our leaders here at the church actually shares a story about where she was in a small group and something similar happened like that for her. So having that support and protecting, it sounds like your group is like that.
It is. It is. And, you know, and even the churches I was involved in growing up, I mean, I was always taught with tithing and all. You know, one of the reasons, you know, we start with 10%, and then that's just a starting point, of course, and then we were called to give above and beyond as we can. But I remember the preacher talking about, you know, when we would help certain individuals, you know, that did need help financially if you're in that season of whatever in between, you know,
Yeah.
something. So I don't know. It's fellowshipping together is a commitment, and it's a church family, and it's a family. I mean, I can feel it, and I haven't been feeling it with this not being together. Like the power went out here yesterday,
Ah,
and you know you don't miss it until you don't have it anymore. That's the
right.
kind of thing is with going. You know, it's just not the same
Yeah.
without everybody together.
I will
So,
echo that. I will echo that completely.
so during
It
on
is.
August 2nd.
Yeah, so yeah, August 2nd's coming, and that's the date we're kind of setting things back in motion and doing things safely. But before we go to that stuff, let's talk real quickly about what happens when like you just led into it, right? You don't miss it till you don't know it's gone. Is what you said. So I always like to use this example, and I used to look for worms when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And we would go fishing. We had a lake behind my house, and I'd always go. We had these big rocks. We'd flip over, and that's where you find worms. You flip
Yeah.
over rocks, and so we'd flip over these rocks. And it's always stuck with me that I would this one particular rock. It was a big flat rock, and I would flip it over. And growing before I flip it over, growing around the rock was this big clover patch, right? This huge clover patch, and it's green clovers everywhere. Occasionally, I'd look for 40 clovers in that, but so I go to flip this big rock over, and I would find underneath this rock or at the edge of the rock, close to the other clovers, but not quite with the clovers, there was this weird, gnarly, white looking plant that was like just just ugly looking. It didn't look normal, so to speak. It didn't like the other things that were around it, but it had like clover like leaves on it. And it always struck me that here was this thing, it was looking for light, and it was trying to grow, and it just looked funny because it wasn't with the rest of them, right? And so that's one of the things I took out of that, and that's stuck with me all my life. And the importance of being together and being connected in fellowship with other believers is that you need that because you get weird, right? You
Yeah.
get weird.
Yeah. Strange.
You get strange.
And for me, I need the accountability, and I need the encouragement. I mean, how easy for me anyway. My experience. I mentioned earlier how I go through these peaks and valleys, and I think you and I have talked about it before. I was really back on board before this all hit. My kids were going to school. I was getting up at 5, reading the Bible, and then this all hit. And now I'm sleeping in until 7, 7:30, 8. So you know the kids aren't getting up. And that just went out the window. So
Yeah,
I find if I put it off, I never get to it. But I need the encouragement and the strength, and just hearing, you know, the word and being together. It's amazing what it does to me. Something happens. I mean, I feel very distant sometimes from God. You know, when I'm not in it. I guess I don't know if that makes
oh,
sense,
it
but
does.
I
Yeah,
need the encouragement. It just really and being there, even if we miss church for whatever it is for a few weeks or whatever it is, it's not the same. It just doesn't seem like it's the same. So it's important in that.
yeah, it is. One of the reasons. One of the reasons is super important that, and I like that you keep segueing into really awesome points.
Yeah.
I use this as well when we're talking about. You ever watch one of those nature shows
Oh yeah.
that
Me too.
they have the antelopes and they're all or the whatever the water buffaloes are all migrating and running and then you see the lions that are out stalking them, right? And
Yep.
they never go for the group as a whole, right? They always go for the outliers, the ones that are away from the group. And so that's what the enemy does. If another reason fellowship and connectivity is important is if you're out by yourself, you're vulnerable because there is safety in numbers as a believer. Though we are children of God, you're vulnerable to that. You're more vulnerable to that when you're separated from other people. We got a good comment. Amanda Korb said that she said the Sunday school class that I'm in really helped and supported me when I had some medical issues in January. See, that's
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's one of those that's nail on the head points right there. That you have a fellowship of believers and a connectivity going on that they rallied around and protected and supported during a crisis, which is enormously huge. So you mentioned a couple times that it's just not the same, right?
Right.
It's just not the same. And no matter what we do and try, that there's something to that gathering together, right?
Right.
And that gathering together is important. And so, August 2nd, we're coming back to that gathering together corporately. But we've had some Sunday school classes, some groups, and other folks that have been choosing to meet digitally and things like that, which I encourage. But we're going to begin to start working with a lot of our groups that haven't done that to start trying to do that if they're wanting to do that, to try to bring some connectivity as this COVID-19 mess does what it does, and that. So it's not the same as that in person, but it's as close as some of those people can safely get with those. Again, guys, if you have additional comments, throw them out there. These are great. What has fellowship meant to you? What has connectivity meant to you? If you're watching with us right now, put something out. Tell us about a time that for example, you had your group praying for you, right? Or that someone helped balance and strengthen, that iron sharpens iron moment. Tell us about that. Throw that out there, and we'll put that out there and talk.
And Travis, you weren't at the men's group. You had more important things this year to attend to, but one of the speakers was a guy, a member of our church that was going through some medical issues, and it was powerful to hear him speak on what his men's group meant to him during that time and how they got him through the hardship that he was dealing with, and the prayer, and he got some, so I know that was huge for him, and I can only imagine, the people that truly knew him, he knowing that these guys were in his corner.
Right. Yeah, it makes a difference to have that going on. One of my favorite and speaking of men's groups, one of my favorite statements that I've ever heard someone make, I think it was Blake Roberts that made the statement. He said, before he got into a group, and again, I don't want to, groups are one way to do this. There's other ways, and we'll talk about that in a second. But before he got into a real group, he didn't know that guys shared like that. That was what he said. He goes, I didn't know that guys talk like that.
Right.
And once he saw that, he's like, what in the world? And then it connected, right? Because there's that thing where, guys aren't supposed to share like that, or we're supposed to.
That's right. No, the men's retreat, again, I keep bringing the men's retreat. I didn't like small groups, breaking out into small groups, and 2 years ago that changed. It was just amazing with it helped having Steve Brooks in your group, but
yeah, Steve will talk to the wall.
Right. Yeah. It was never a dull conversation, but it was just the different ages too, and hearing the stories, and it just really, you don't feel like you're so alone. And, it's just, I didn't think grown men talk that way either. And this last year, some of the guys that were in the group were just blown away. Life changing from just the small groups that we would have, that we broke out into the conversations. They were just life changing and wanted to get back, into things.
Yeah, so, that's hitting it on the head.
It has tentacles that can branch out.
Yeah, exactly. So I said there's different ways to do this. If you're watching, I don't want you to get the idea that it's only groups that do this with, because the fellowship and connectivity exists beyond just a small group. They exist in Sunday school classes, adult Sunday school classes. They exist in interest groups that will meet up. Maybe a bunch of guys and gals like running, right? It exists there. That fellowship of other believers, it exists in those ways. And one of my pet peeves is the messaging that would say that there's only one way that happens. Because in reality, there's not. And the reason there's not is because God created each and every one of us different, right? And at different seasons of our lives, we need different things. And those different things can bring that fellowship and that connectivity. And there are certain things that are easier for it to happen with than others. But not everybody is ready for a group, right?
That's right.
Not everybody's there yet. A good entry point. Say that again. Say what you just said again. I didn't hear.
To that, yeah. Not everybody is ready. It can be. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan, but.
Well, let me ask you this: Why were this will help answer that. Why people aren't? Why were you not a big fan of it at first?
For me, this might sound strange. It reminds me of school. Whenever we would get into groups, and everybody would have their fair share of work to do, and you get to groups and you start talking about it. And I didn't really have a whole lot to talk about whenever it came to certain subjects in school with small groups. So it's the fear of the silence and the talking and the sharing and not knowing, people at first, just the normal anxieties that you might have maybe.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't know.
No, all that stuff those are all extremely valid reasons why some people aren't ready and have to be slowly worked into that. I look at life groups or small group. We call them life groups here at Hillside, but for this broadcast, we'll say small groups. I look at those as like a really cool pinnacle of where you're at, and because those, it's kind of like the smaller it gets, because if you start out with a bigger class, you can kind of be in the back and you can be known but not known.
Right.
As the group kind of gets smaller, you become more known in that,
Yeah.
and you become a little more free with those people to be known by them and have people who will pray for you personally. All those type of things. Not that it doesn't happen at bigger, but not everybody's ready for that. And I want to make that very clear. If you're not ready for that, that's okay. There's no judgment for that. But there are all manner of other ways that can happen. And again, I mentioned Sunday schools and other things like that. Even classes that we offer here at Hillside, we offer classes from time to time, and you're a part of that discerning group where we'll do seasonal short classes, right? And that's a taste, because usually those aren't any more than about 12 people. That's a taste of what group life can be like. Though they don't go long enough for you to really get deep with people, they give you a taste, right? So when I say there's not a wrong or right way, there's not a perfect way for you to connect with other believers, but connecting with other believers is absolutely important. And
it strengthens you. And I think in the time and day that we're going through now with everything that's under attack and all, I mean, I think we need one another more than ever. And, it does strengthen you, and to know that you are part of a family.
Yeah, and that's now. Let's talk real quick, because we've got a couple more minutes before we get into some of the practicals about August 2nd, some things like that. Let's talk real quick about when like disagreements arise.
Okay.
So have you been in a group where that's happened, where there's been a disagreement?
Yes.
Now, was it comfortable or uncomfortable?
I don't like conflict, so it's always uncomfortable for me. Any kind of, choosing where to go to dinner could be uncomfortable. For me. It was definitely uncomfortable, to answer your question. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's not much different than like in your family, right?
That's right. I was thinking family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, because it's like family, and that's the way it should be. And there are disagreements in family and things like that. But in a good group, in a good group of believers, there's not an offense there. There's not a way to let a fence kind of sit in that mode of stuff, because if you let it sit, it kind of tears that group or family apart. I've had to go into some groups before, not at Hillside, but other places, where there has been an offense that has caused the group to kind of fracture a little bit.
Right.
I had to go in and actually mediate the offense because people started picking sides, right? It's like Thanksgiving dinner where Uncle Bert did something crazy, and then the sides develop. And no, I mean, it was the weirdest thing in the world. But once it got back down to it and the forgiveness happened, and it was like cleaned back in. So I just want to mention that as a thing that it can happen in that as well. So let's jump over real quick. So August 2nd, we're coming back, right? We're coming back to corporate worship in a sense, and we're going to start layering in our kids ministry as well with that, and that's going to be important. But all the other things that aren't a part of the corporate worship setting, like small groups and Sunday school classes and other things like that, our other classes, those are set to come back on September. All right, the very first part of September. And the reason we've done that from a facility standpoint is because, and for those of you watching, is because of the square footage and social distancing type stuff. We had a meeting today in one of our larger rooms, and one of our biggest rooms that we have that normally might hold 30 people on a Sunday morning for a class, we could only really effectively distance about 17 people at 6 foot.
Wow.
So it cuts things in half. So we decided to push it out a little more for that. But in the meantime, what we want to encourage people to do is connect, right? Connect. Because as long as you're connecting, no matter the method, it's big, right? That's a way to actually do that. And I know it's not the same as in person, but we want to encourage you, if you're a part of a life group or a small group and your group hasn't met in a while, go on Zoom, set up a Zoom call, talk to each other, right? Get on FaceTime. There's all kinds of methods to do that with. And to any of our Sunday school classes or leaders that are watching out there right now, if you're not currently doing something like that, I'd love to be able to help you do that. It's really simple. It's really easy. And even when we get back live here on campus, and if you have members who aren't really that comfortable, we've got those giant TVs set up in our classroom that we can have people zoom into the class as well. So we're working on different options for that to make that connectivity super, super positive and actually have it happen, because we know it's important. Relationships are absolutely important. They're in every single way. So we want to make sure that's kind of jumped on there. So Jason, you have any other thoughts about connections in the church, relationships?
Yeah, just one thought on what you just said. My neighbor, he and his wife, family, they go to Hillside as well. They his men's group, they've started doing that last couple months on Sunday evenings. They connect, Zoom or whatever it is, Skype, and I know it is important because with different things that people are going through, whatever financially, jobs during this time, it's helps, and it is easy to connect that way. I mean,
It is.
We've connected just FaceTime with our groups that we've been involved in the past. So, and it's just nice. And we've all done it during this time with grandparents, right, and family members and all. But it's easy to do, and it's important.
Yeah, one of the things that I know we've talked about as far in our spiritual formation council has been
Right.
in the fall. We always tend to offer classes right here on site, and we have some classes set that we're gonna try to offer on site. But we've also talked about offering digital and virtual versions of those, so that people could connect virtually and actually experience the class in a manner that they may feel more comfortable with, as like a doorway and a stepping stone into that. So I know the live thing's like the goal, right? Because everybody wants to get back live. Everybody wants to get back in person. I can't wait for the day we're doing these midweek connections when I've got the guest here with me at the church versus having to because there's so many things that can go wrong with this. But there's a different energy when it comes to being live and in person and connecting. So I guess a good way to do it, because we're right at our time limit, is to close out this way. To close out with the scripture we started with, and that's in Hebrews 10:25. And I'm just going to quote it out there because I think it speaks in this time of the pandemic and all the other stuff going on, social distancing and the fear that's out there. This scripture speaks directly to that, and it says this. It says, "Let us not give up the habit of meeting together." That's the first thing it says. Let us not give up that habit, and the reason it says that is because God knows how important it is for us to connect, because He says where two or three are gathered, right? And then it goes on and says this: "Let us not give up the habit of meeting together as some are doing. Instead, let us encourage one another." And that's big. That's big. That was so big it knocked your camera straight up.
I bet.
All right, Jason, I appreciate you spending time with me this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's good to see you, even though we're not live.
Yeah, I know it's good. It's good to be seen. Yeah, have fun in Florida the rest of your time.
I appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, thanks, Jason. Guys, if you are currently watching with us as we close out today, I'm just going to say we want to bring that announcement back up. I put it up a little prematurely, but our campus updates and staying in the know, it's important for us that we put that information out there for you. August 2nd is our open date that we're coming up on, and we want you to stay in the know. So always you can go to hillsideumc.org /update, hillsideumc.org /updates. And if you have any questions you can't find the answer to there, info at hillsideumc.org. So again, we thank you for being with us today. And next week, you're in for a treat. We're going to finish out our spiritual formation discussion, and we're actually going to have a guest, and they're going to actually interview me, and we're going to talk about how we do spiritual formation here at Hillside, how the method, the thoughts behind what we do. And so if you're interested in that kind of stuff, tune in. It's going to be an awesome thing. So until then, I want to say thanks for joining us on the Midweek Connection.